The Ferrari's engine roared one last time before dying completely. Malcolm Reed stepped out, designer shoes clicking against oil-stained concrete, and laughed at the man in grease-covered overalls who would fix his $250,000 mistake. "You really think you can handle this, buddy?" 24 hours later, that same laugh would be frozen on his face as Ferrari's chief engineer stood in that very garage, offering Jack Wilson something Malcolm's money could never buy: recognition of true genius. Stay with me till the end of this story, and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this journey travels. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the mist hanging over Millfield when Jack Wilson unlocked the roll-up door of Wilson's Auto Repair. The metal groaned, a familiar sound, like an old friend clearing their throat before speaking. Inside the garage smelled of motor oil, brake fluid, and years of honest work. 3 lifts stood ready, tools organized on pegboards with the precision of a man who respected his craft. And in the corner office, really just a glass-walled box with a desk and filing cabinet, sat notebooks. Dozens of them, filled with sketches, calculations, dreams. Jack was 42, with calloused hands that told stories his mouth never would. His daughter Emma, 16 and sharp as a tack, was already there, earbuds and doing homework at the small desk they'd wedged between the tire rack and the wall. She looked up when he entered, pulled out one earbud and smiled. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, sunshine. You're here early." "Chemistry test, needed quiet." She gestured at their small apartment above the garage. Mrs. Patterson's TV was doing that thing again. Jack made a mental note to fix their elderly neighbor's television. Again. For free. Again. "Want coffee?" he asked. "Already made some. It's terrible." "That's my girl." They shared a grin. These moments, quiet, simple theirs, were what Jack lived for. Emma's mother had left when she was 3, decided motherhood and small-town life weren't her calling. Jack never spoke ill of her, never made Emma choose sides in a war that only had one combatant. He just showed up. Every day, every homework assignment, every parent-teacher conference, every scraped knee and broken heart. The garage had been his father's before him, and his grandfather's before that. 3 generations of Wilson men who knew that an engine's knock could tell you more than any diagnostic computer if you listened right. Jack had listened. And somewhere along the way, between oil changes and transmission rebuilds, he'd started to wonder, what if engines could be better? What if the mathematics of combustion and efficiency could be reimagined? So he sketched. Late nights after Emma went to bed, he filled notebooks with designs that existed only in his mind and on those pages. Hybrid systems before hybrids were cool. Fuel efficiency algorithms that would make engineers at MIT sit up and take notice if they ever saw them. But Jack wasn't looking for notice. He was looking for truth, the kind that lived in perfect mechanical harmony. At 9:47 a.m., everything changed. The sound hit first, a roar that didn't belong in Millfield, didn't belong anywhere near the modest Main Street with its hardware store and diner and post office. It was the sound of money, of power, of excess. Emma looked up from her chemistry textbook, eyes wide. "Dad, is that—" "Yeah," Jack said, already moving toward the bay door. The Ferrari LaFerrari, one of only 499 ever made, worth over $1 million, pulled into his garage like a red lightning bolt slicing through ordinary life. But the sound was wrong. Beneath that legendary engine's roar was a hitch, a stutter, a mechanical hiccup that made Jack's trained ear wince. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Malcolm Reed. Everyone in Millfield knew Malcolm Reed, or knew of him. He'd grown up here, son of the bank manager, full of big dreams and bigger ego. He'd left at 18, made his fortune in tech acquisitions in Silicon Valley, and returned exactly once a year, always in a different exotic car, always making sure everyone saw. He owned a vacation home on Miller's Lake, used it maybe 2 weeks a year, and treated it like a throne from which to look down on the kingdom he'd escaped. Today he wore a suit that cost more than Jack's monthly mortgage. His watch caught the light. Swiss, complicated, unnecessary. His hair was styled with product that probably had French words on the bottle, and his face wore an expression Jack had seen too many times, contempt wrapped in amusement. "Well, well," Malcolm said, his voice carrying that particular pitch of someone who enjoys the sound of his own words. "Wilson's Auto Repair. My GPS kept insisting this was the nearest shop, but I told my assistant, surely there's a Ferrari dealership somewhere in this godforsaken—" He stopped, made a show of looking around. "Oh, right. This is Millfield. We're lucky to have a stop sign." Emma had appeared at Jack's shoulder. At 16, she hadn't yet learned to hide her feelings behind the kind of polite mask adults wore. Her jaw tightened, her eyes flashed. Jack put a gentle hand on her arm. "Something we can help you with, Mr. Reed." Jack's voice was level, professional kind. Malcolm laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bouncing off the garage walls like mockery made audible. "Help me. Look, buddy, this is a LaFerrari. It's a hybrid hypercar with an 800 horsepower V12 and a 161 horsepower electric motor. The engine management system is more complex than the space shuttle. No offense, but—" He gestured at the garage, at Jack's oil-stained coveralls, at the entire modest operation. "You really think you can fix this?" The words hung in the air. Emma's face flushed red. Jack felt her tense, ready to defend him, and he squeezed her arm gently. "Not yet," the gesture said. "Not worth it." "I can take a look," Jack said simply. "Oh, this I've got to see." Malcolm pulled out his phone, newest model naturally, and started recording. "For posterity. Small-town mechanic versus Italian engineering masterpiece. This'll be great for my Instagram." Jack had dealt with men like Malcolm before. Men who measured worth in dollars and status, who couldn't imagine that expertise might live in unexpected places, who confused credentials with capability. He didn't take it personally. How could you take personally the opinions of someone who fundamentally didn't see you? "Emma," Jack said quietly, "why don't you head back to your homework?" "But Dad—" "It's okay, sunshine." She left, but not before shooting Malcolm a look that could have melted titanium. Malcolm didn't notice. He was too busy narrating like a nature documentary filmmaker who'd stumbled upon something exotic and amusing. "So here we are, folks, at Wilson's Auto Repair, where apparently," he chuckled into the camera, "they think they can work on a car that costs more than their entire building." Jack moved to the Ferrari, ran his hand along the hood with the respect the machine deserved regardless of its owner. "What's she doing?" "She," Malcolm mimicked. "It's a car, not your girlfriend. Though I guess in a town like this—" He trailed off, leaving the insult hanging. "It's cutting out, losing power at high RPMs. I was driving through your charming little hamlet, and it just started coughing like an old man with emphysema." Jack popped the hood. The Ferrari's engine bay was a work of art, carbon fiber titanium engineering at its absolute peak. But Jack didn't see it as intimidating. He saw it as a puzzle, and puzzles had solutions. He leaned in, listening. His hands moved with practiced precision, checking connections, examining sensors, tracing fuel lines. Malcolm kept recording, kept talking. "This is classic, right? Guy probably learned everything from a Haynes manual and YouTube videos. Now he's wait, are you actually touching it without diagnostic equipment? Oh, this is rich. This is—" "Found it," Jack said. Malcolm stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "Your fuel pressure regulator's failing. See this sensor here?" Jack pointed. "It's sending incorrect data to your engine management system. The system thinks you're running lean, so it's pulling timing and limiting power to prevent engine damage. Smart engineering, actually. Probably saved your engine." Malcolm's smirk faltered. "How could you possibly know that without a computer?" "I listened. When you pulled in, your engine note changed right before each stutter. That's timing, not mechanical failure. And see this residue here?" Jack indicated a small amount of fuel around a sensor connection. "Your regulator's leaking. Not enough to cause a pressure drop on its own, but enough to give false readings when combined with the sensor malfunction. For the first time, Malcolm looked uncertain. Okay, but can you fix it? Need to replace the regulator and recalibrate the sensor. I don't have Ferrari-specific parts on hand. Malcolm's smirk started to return. But I can modify a Bosch unit I have in stock. Won't be perfect, but it'll get you to the nearest Ferrari service center without damaging anything. Modify. Malcolm made it sound like profanity. You want to put aftermarket parts in $1 million Ferrari. I want to get you back on the road. But it's your car, Mr. Reed. Your call. Malcolm looked at his watch at his phone at the impossible situation of being stuck in Millfield, Ohio. Fine, whatever, just be careful. This car cost more than you'll make in a lifetime. Jack didn't respond to that. He simply went to work. And as he worked, Malcolm talked. God, did he talk. About his latest acquisition, a medical software company in San Diego. About his house in Palo Alto. About the charity gala, where he'd rubbed elbows with senators and tech billionaires. About his car collection, the Lamborghini, the McLaren, the limited edition Porsche. Each story was a humble brag wrapped in false modesty, delivered to an audience of one who neither asked nor cared. Emma emerged once with water bottles. She set one near her father without a word, then looked at Malcolm. "That's really cool about your cars," she said, voice dripping with teenage sarcasm that Malcolm was too self-absorbed to detect. "My dad has a collection too." Malcolm perked up. "Oh, restoration project Model Ts or something?" "Notebooks. He designs engines. Has since I was little." "Designs engines." Malcolm's laugh was sharp unkind. "That's adorable. Every shade tree mechanic thinks they're the next Enzo Ferrari." "He's good at it," Emma said, defensive now. "Really good. He's got ideas about hybrid efficiency that—" "Emma." Jack's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Reed's not interested." "Smart man," Malcolm said. "No offense, sweetheart, but your dad's job is to fix cars, not design them. That takes years of university advanced degrees, teams of engineers with supercomputers. It's not something you just doodle in a notebook." He chuckled again, that same dismissive sound. "I'm sure they're very creative, though." Emma's hands balled into fists. Jack caught her eye, shook his head slightly. She left, but the look she gave Malcolm could have stripped paint. Jack kept working. His hands moved through the Ferrari's engine bay like a surgeon's, confident, precise, respectful. He'd seen the design before, not in person, but in technical papers he'd read online late at night. Ferrari's hybrid system was brilliant, truly brilliant, but he'd noticed something. A small inefficiency in how the electric motor integrated with the V12 during power transitions. Nothing that affected performance dramatically, but enough that someone who understood the mathematics of energy transfer would see it. In fact, he'd sketched a solution once. 3 months ago, late on a Tuesday night while Emma slept upstairs. A variable coupling system that would smooth the power delivery, increase efficiency by maybe 4%, reduce the slight hesitation during, "What are you looking at?" Malcolm's voice cut through Jack's thoughts. Jack realized he'd been staring at the hybrid coupling, his mind wandering to his notebook. "Nothing, just admiring the engineering." "Yeah, well, admire it while you're fixing it. I've got a meeting in Cleveland at 3. It took Jack 45 minutes to modify the Bosch regulator to match Ferrari's specifications, replace the failing sensor, and recalibrate the system. He did it without a computerized diagnostic tool, relying instead on decades of experience and an understanding of engine management systems that ran deeper than programming code. When he started the Ferrari, it roared to life perfectly. No stutter, no hesitation, pure mechanical poetry. Malcolm's eyebrows rose. "Well, I'll be damned." "Take it easy for the first 20 miles, Jack said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Let the system relearn your driving patterns, and get to a Ferrari service center within the week for proper parts." Malcolm didn't say thank you. Instead, he said, "How much?" "200 for the parts and labor." 200. Malcolm pulled out his wallet, extracted 300s, dropped them on the workbench like he was feeding pigeons. Keep the change. Consider it charity. God knows this town needs it. He started toward his car, then paused, turned back. Hey, can I see those notebooks your daughter was talking about? The engine designs. The air quotes were audible. Jack hesitated. Those notebooks were private, personal. They were the cathedral he'd built in the margins of his life, the place where his mind could soar beyond oil changes and brake jobs. I'd rather not. Come on, I'm curious. Humor me. Something in Jack's gut said no. But Malcolm was already moving toward the office, and Jack didn't want a scene. He watched as Malcolm picked up one of the notebooks from the desk. Emma shouldn't have left these out, Jack said quietly. Malcolm flipped through pages covered in sketches, equations, three-dimensional drawings of engine components that existed only in Jack's imagination. He stopped at one page, the variable hybrid coupling system Jack had been thinking about earlier. What's this supposed to be? It's just an idea, a way to smooth power delivery in high-performance hybrid systems. Malcolm stared at the page, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled, not a kind smile, a smile like a shark finding a wounded fish. This is hilarious. He pulled out his phone. Mind if I take a picture? Every instinct in Jack's body screamed, no. But what could he say? What right did he have to be precious about scribbles in a notebook? I guess. The phone's camera clicked. Once, twice, 3 times. This is gold, Malcolm said. Absolutely gold. Local mechanic thinks he's an engineer. My followers are going to eat this up. Mr. Reed, I'd appreciate if you didn't. Didn't what? Share a good laugh? Come on, don't be sensitive. It's all in fun. He tucked the phone away, headed for his Ferrari. Thanks for the fix, Jack. Really. You're good at what you do. Oil changes, brake jobs, simple stuff. That's valuable. Just maybe stick to that. Yeah. Leave the innovation to people who actually understand it. He climbed into this Ferrari, revved the engine perfectly smooth now, thanks to Jack's work, and pulled out tires, squealing unnecessarily on the asphalt. Emma emerged from where she'd been hiding behind the tire rack. Dad, he took pictures of your... I know. That's not okay. Those are yours. Those ideas are just ideas, Em. They're not going to change the world. They're just something I do. They're genius, Emma said fiercely. Anyone with half a brain could see that. But that man doesn't have half a brain. He's got half a heart. Jack pulled his daughter into a hug. Hey, it's okay. You know what your grandpa used to say? Truth doesn't need applause. If the ideas are good, they're good whether Malcolm Reed thinks so or not. But it's not fair. No, Jack agreed. It's not. But fair and true aren't the same thing. Come on, help me clean up. Then we'll grab lunch at Rosie's. My treat. You always say that like you're not the only one who pays, Emma grumbled, but she was smiling again. They cleaned the garage together, Emma handing tools to her father, both of them falling into the comfortable rhythm they'd developed over 16 years of being a team. Jack told himself he didn't care about Malcolm's photos, about the mockery, about any of it. He almost believed it. That night, after Emma went to bed, Jack sat in his office with one of the notebooks open in front of him. The variable coupling system stared back at him, equations and sketches that represented thousands of hours of thought, of iteration, of pure intellectual joy. He'd never built it, never even tried. What was the point? He didn't have access to the machining equipment, the testing facilities, the resources that real engineering required. But God, it was beautiful. The mathematics worked. The physics was sound. In a perfect world with the right support, he could prove that a self-taught mechanic from Millfield, Ohio, could contribute something meaningful to automotive innovation. In a perfect world. Jack closed the notebook, turned off the light, and headed upstairs. Tomorrow, there would be more oil changes, more brake jobs, more honest work that paid the bills, and kept Emma fed and safe. That was enough. It had to be enough. He didn't check social media that night. Didn't see the post Malcolm had made at 11:47 p.m., featuring 3 photos of Jack's sketches with the caption, "Local mechanic thinks he's Enzo Ferrari. Stick to spark plugs, pal. # dreams vs reality. How's our small town? Humor must know your place." He didn't see it get 847 likes in the first hour. Didn't see it get shared. Didn't see the comments, some laughing, some cruel, some pitying. But somewhere in Maranello, Italy, a Ferrari engineer named Dr. Roy, Alessandra Rossi, was scrolling through her feed during a late-night break from a problem that had been plaguing her team for 8 months. A problem with hybrid coupling efficiency. A problem that had consumed millions in research and yielded no breakthrough. She stopped scrolling, stared at the photo, zoomed in, and whispered to her empty office, "Jesu Cristo." He solved it. The phone call that would change Jack Wilson's life was already being dialed, though it wouldn't arrive until morning. The machinery of fate was turning, set in motion by Malcolm Reed's arrogance and Jack's quiet genius. But that night, Jack slept peacefully, unaware that his world was about to shift on its axis, unaware that sometimes, just sometimes, truth doesn't just speak for itself. Sometimes it roars. Jack woke at 5:30 a.m., same as always. The alarm hadn't even gone off yet. His body just knew. 42 years of waking before dawn had programmed something deep in his bones, some internal clock that said it was time to be useful, time to work, time to show up for another day. He made coffee in the small kitchen above the garage, the kind that came in a red can and cost $4, and stood by the window watching Millfield wake up. Mr. Patterson was already shuffling to his mailbox in his bathrobe, probably hoping for the disability check that always came on Tuesdays. The bakery across the street had its lights on Mrs. Chen inside, making the kolaches that half the town lived for. A dog barked somewhere. A truck rumbled past. Normal. Ordinary. Good. Jack liked mornings because they belonged to him. Emma wouldn't wake for another hour, and in that sacred quiet space, he could think. Could be himself without worrying about being a father, a business owner, a man trying to hold together a life with duct tape and determination. He sipped his terrible coffee and thought about the Ferrari from yesterday, about Malcolm Reed's casual cruelty, about how some people moved through the world taking up space, like they'd bought extra square footage in reality itself. Then he thought about the notebooks and felt a small twist of anxiety. He shouldn't have let Malcolm photograph those pages. Something about it felt like a violation, like someone had read his diary or gone through his medicine cabinet. Those sketches were private thoughts made visible, dreams given shape, and now they were on Malcolm Reed's phone, probably already forgotten among 1,000 other photos of expensive meals and first-class upgrades. Jack shook his head, drained his coffee, and headed downstairs to open the garage. The day's schedule was light. Mrs. Patterson's Buick needed an oil change. The Henderson kids' Civic had a check engine light, and someone from Miller's Lake was bringing in a boat trailer with electrical issues. Honest work. Simple work. The kind that paid bills and didn't require defending yourself to millionaires who thought education only counted if it came with a diploma frame. He didn't check his phone, didn't even think to. But at 6:47 a.m., his phone started buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Text messages, which was weird, because the only person who texted him regularly was Emma, and she was still asleep upstairs. He pulled the phone from his pocket, squinting at the screen. The first message was from Tommy Rodriguez, who'd gone to high school with Jack, and now ran the hardware store. "Dude, you see this?" The second was from Rosie at the diner. "Jack, honey, don't let it get to you. That man's an ass." The third was from his cousin Sarah in Cincinnati. "OMG, Jack, is this real? Call me." A cold feeling settled in Jack's stomach. He opened Tommy's message, which included a link to Instagram. The post loaded slowly on the garage's spotty Wi-Fi pixels, assembling themselves into something that made Jack's breath catch. There were his sketches. 3 of them photographed in harsh phone camera light, and above them, Malcolm Reed's caption. Each word a small knife. Local mechanic thinks he's Enzo Ferrari stick to spark plug's pal. The likes counter read 12,439. The comments section went on forever. Jack scrolled his coffee sitting heavy and sour in his stomach. This is hilarious. Everyone's got dreams, I guess. Dude probably learned engineering from YouTube LOL. Kinda sad, actually. My uncle does the same thing. Thinks he invented a better mousetrap. Some people just can't accept their place. Not all the comments were cruel. Some people defended him. How do you know they're not good ideas? And kind of a dick move to mock someone's hobby. But those voices were drowned in a tide of laughter, of casual dismissal of strangers who'd never met Jack Wilson, deciding they knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. Somewhere in the middle of the comments, someone had written, "This is why I left small-town America. Everyone thinks they're special. Nobody is." Jack set the phone down like it might burn him. His hands were shaking, which made him angry at himself. Why did he care? Why did it matter what strangers on the internet thought about his notebooks, his ideas, his private way of working through problems that fascinated him? But God, it mattered. It mattered because those sketches represented the best parts of himself. The parts that existed beyond oil stains and overdue bills and the grinding necessity of survival. They were proof that his mind could still wonder, still create, still reach for something beyond the ordinary boundaries of his life. And Malcolm Reed had turned them into a joke, a meme, a way for thousands of people to feel momentarily superior to someone they'd never meet. The garage door rumbled open. Emma stood there in her pajamas, phone in hand, her face a storm of teenage fury. "Dad, did you see?" "Yeah." "That absolute—" She caught herself barely. "He had no right. Those are your ideas. Your work. He can't just—" "He can actually. I let him photograph them. Because he pressured you. Because he's a manipulative jerk who dad this has like 15,000 likes. People are sharing it everywhere. Some guy on Twitter called you delusion goals, whatever that means." Jack moved toward his daughter, put his hands on her shoulders. She was shaking too, vibrating with the particular rage that comes from watching someone you love get hurt and being powerless to stop it. "Emma, look at me." She did, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "It's going to be okay," he said. How is this okay? Everyone's laughing at you. At us. At sketches in a notebook. That's all. They're not laughing at who we are or what we've built or how we treat people. They're laughing at something they don't understand, which says more about them than it does about me. "That's very zen of you, Dad, but I'm still furious." "I know. Me too a little. But fury doesn't fix anything. Work does. So let's work." Emma wanted to argue, he could see it in her face, but she also knew her father well enough to recognize when his mind was made up. She nodded, sniffed, and headed back upstairs to get ready for school. Jack turned back to his phone. The post was still there, still growing, still spreading across the internet like a virus. He thought about deleting his social media accounts, then realized that wouldn't matter. Screenshots lived forever. The damage was done. He was about to pocket the phone when a new notification appeared. A comment just posted from an account with a verified blue checkmark. The username was @AliRossiFerrari. The profile picture showed a woman in her 40s, with sharp features and sharper eyes. The comment read, "Interesting perspective on hybrid coupling efficiency. Would the original designer be open to discussing their methodology?" Jack stared at the words, read them again, then a third time. Before he could process what was happening, his phone rang. Unknown number. International prefix. His thumb hovered over the decline button, probably a spam call, but something made him answer. "Hello?" "Mr. Jack Wilson." The voice was female, accented Italian, he thought. Professional, but warm. Yes, who's? My name is Dr. Alessandra Rossi. I'm the chief engineer for Ferrari's hybrid development division in Maranello. I apologize for calling so early in your time zone, but I've just seen some photographs of your work and well, I'm quite stunned actually. Jack's brain stuttered to a halt. Ferrari. Chief engineer, his work. I'm sorry, is someone pranking me right now? A laugh genuine and kind. I understand the skepticism. No, Mr. Wilson, this is quite real. The sketches that were posted online, the variable coupling system for hybrid power delivery. Do you have more documentation on that concept? It's just something I was thinking about. I saw a paper on Ferrari's hybrid architecture and thought there might be a more efficient way to wait. You're serious? You're actually from Ferrari? I am. And I'm looking at your sketch right now, Mr. Wilson, and unless I'm very much mistaken, you've solved a problem my team has been struggling with for 8 months. We've invested considerable resources trying to smooth the power transition between electric and combustion systems without sacrificing response time. The solution you've outlined, the variable coupling with phase-adjusted torque distribution, it's elegant, it's brilliant. And I'd very much like to know if you've done any practical testing. Jack leaned against his workbench, afraid his legs might give out. No testing, no equipment, just math and thought experiments. I don't even have CAD software. It's all hand-drawn. The best ideas often start on napkins and notebook paper, Dr. Rossi said. Mr. Wilson, I know this must seem surreal, but would you be willing to meet with me? I'm actually in the United States this week for a conference in Detroit. I could drive to Millfield tomorrow morning. You want to drive to Ohio, from Detroit, to talk to me. I want to drive to Ohio to talk to the man who might have just saved my team 6 months and several million euros in research costs. Yes. Jack's mind was reeling, tumbling through possibilities and impossibilities. This was crazy. This was a mistake. Any second now, Dr. Rossi would realize she'd been looking at the sketches wrong, that they didn't actually solve anything, that Jack was just a mechanic with delusions of competence. But she was still talking. I understand if you need time to think about it, she said. But Mr. Wilson, I've been engineering vehicles for 23 years. I have a PhD from Politecnico di Milano. I've worked with some of the most brilliant automotive minds in the world. And when I saw your sketches this morning, I did something I rarely do. I called my team at 3 a.m. Italy time and said, I think we found it. So please, if you're willing, let me come see your work properly. Okay, Jack heard himself say. Yes, okay. Excellent. I'll be there at 9 a.m. Oh, and Mr. Wilson, don't let the mockery bother you. Most revolutionary ideas are laughed at first. It's almost a requirement. She hung up. Jack stood in his garage, phone still pressed to his ear, wondering if he'd just hallucinated the entire conversation. But no, the call log showed 23 minutes with an Italian number. Real. This was real. Emma thundered down the stairs, backpack over one shoulder, still angry at the world on her father's behalf. Dad, I've been thinking. We should report that post. Instagram has rules about Emma. Jack turned to face her, and whatever she saw in his expression made her stop mid-sentence. Ferrari just called. What? Ferrari, the car company. Their chief engineer. She saw the post. She's coming here tomorrow. Emma's backpack slid off her shoulder and hit the floor. She's coming here, to Millfield, because of your sketches. Because apparently I solved a problem they've been working on. She said She said it was brilliant. His daughter's face went through several expressions at once. Shock, vindication, fierce pride, and something that looked like, I told you so, restrained by love. Then she laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the garage. Oh my God! Oh my God! Dad, do you know what this means? Malcolm Reed tried to humiliate you, and instead he basically introduced you to Ferrari. He's such an idiot. He's the world's biggest idiot. We don't know what this means yet. Jack cautioned, but he couldn't stop smiling. She's just coming to talk, that's all. That's everything, Dad. This is you have to tell people. You have to post something back to Malcolm like, thanks for the introduction, or, no. But, no, Emma. We don't gloat. We don't stoop. If this turns into something real, that'll speak for itself. Until then, we just keep working. Keep being who we are. Emma looked at him with an expression that was equal parts exasperation and admiration. You're too good sometimes, you know that. I'm really not. I just know that revenge and pride are expensive luxuries we can't afford. Now come on, you're going to be late for school. School? Right. School seems incredibly unimportant right now, but okay. She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door, then paused. Dad, I always knew they were good. Your ideas. I always knew. I know you did, sunshine. After Emma left, Jack tried to work. Mrs. Patterson's Buick sat on the lift waiting for its oil change, but his hands kept shaking and his mind kept racing. Ferrari. Coming here, tomorrow, to see him, to talk about his work. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. More messages, more notifications. The post was still spreading, still gaining momentum, but now there was a strange counter-narrative forming. Someone had screenshotted Dr. Rossi's comment and posted it separately with the caption, "Plot twist: Ferrari's chief engineer thinks the joke sketches are actually genius." That post was getting shared too. The comments section was turning into a battlefield between people who insisted Jack was a fraud and people who were starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the joke was on Malcolm Reed. Someone found Jack's garage on Google Maps and left a 5-star review. Owner is apparently an unrecognized engineering genius, also fixes Ferraris. Another person created a meme, Drake refusing something labeled expensive engineering degree, and Drake approving something labeled sketching genius ideas in Ohio garage. The internet was a strange place, Jack thought. A place where you could be humiliated and vindicated in the same 12-hour period, where mockery could accidentally become marketing, where the cruelest intentions could backfire in the most unexpected ways. He forced himself to focus on work, oil change, brake inspection, simple tasks that his hands could do while his mind spun in circles. But he kept thinking about Dr. Rossi's voice, the certainty in it when she said, "Brilliant." Kept thinking about 8 months of research, millions in investment teams of credentialed engineers, and all of them stuck on a problem that Jack had solved alone late at night, with nothing but a mechanical pencil and the pure joy of intellectual challenge. Maybe his father had been wrong. Maybe truth did need applause, sometimes not for the truth's sake, but for the teller's. Maybe Jack had spent so long being humble, being quiet, being grateful for what he had, that he'd forgotten to imagine he might deserve more. The day crawled past. Customers came and went, some mentioning the viral post with awkward laughs, others pretending they hadn't seen it. Tommy Rodriguez stopped by at lunch with sandwiches from Rosie's. "So," Tommy said, unwrapping his meatball sub. "You're famous." Famously mocked. "Famously noticed by Ferrari, last I heard. Rosie's whole diner is talking about it. Half the town thinks it's the best thing ever. Other half thinks Dr. Rossi is punking you. What do you think?" Tommy took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "I think you've been sketching in those notebooks since high school. I think you see things in engines that other people don't. And I think if Ferrari's calling, it's because they know quality when they see it." He paused. "Also, I think Malcolm Reed is probably shitting bricks right about now." Jack laughed despite himself. "Don't. Why Not Guy tried to humiliate you and it backfired spectacularly. That's poetic justice, man. That's karma. That's not who we are. Maybe it's who you should be sometimes. You're too nice, Jack. Always have been. Sometimes people need to face consequences." They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that came from 30 years of friendship. When Tommy left, he clapped Jack on the shoulder and said, "Proud of you, hermano. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you." Emma came home from school bubbling with stories. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen the post, seen the follow-up, seen the comments. Her chemistry teacher had pulled her aside to say that creativity and genius often looked the same as foolishness until someone with authority validated it. Her best friend Maya had spent lunch break defending Jack's honor to a table of skeptics. The whole town was watching, waiting, hoping. "It's a lot of pressure," Emma said. "Everyone expecting this to be some fairy tale ending." "It's just a conversation," Jack reminded her. "Just someone coming to look at some sketches, that's all. No promises, no guarantees." But that night after Emma went to bed, Jack pulled out all his notebooks, 23 of them spanning 16 years. He laid them across his desk, open to pages of hybrid systems and fuel efficiency algorithms and aerodynamic modifications. His life's intellectual work spread out like a museum exhibit of his own mind. Some of the sketches were crude early attempts when he barely understood the mathematics involved. Others were sophisticated, refined through iteration and research, and countless nights of pushing his brain to its limits. Together, they told a story of a man who refused to let his circumstances define his potential, who insisted on dreaming even when dreaming seemed impractical. Jack ran his hand over the pages, feeling the indentations where his pencil had pressed hard during moments of breakthrough, the smudges where he'd erased and revised and perfected. These weren't just ideas. They were proof that he existed beyond the roles life had assigned him. Proof that somewhere beneath the mechanic, the single father, the small-town survivor, there lived a mind that could create something new. He closed the notebooks, stacked them carefully, and tried to sleep. But sleep was elusive, chased away by possibility and fear in equal measure. What if Dr. Rossi came and realized the sketches only looked good to someone who didn't understand advanced engineering? What if this was all a mistake? A misunderstanding that would leave him more humiliated than Malcolm's post ever could? Or worse, what if it was real? What if his ideas actually mattered? What if the life he'd built, the modest contentment he'd cultivated, was about to be torn apart by opportunity he'd never prepared for? At 3:00 a.m., Jack gave up on sleep and made coffee. Stood at the window watching Millfield sleep all those lives, tucked away in small houses, on small streets, in a small town that the world drove past without noticing. He loved it here. Loved the simplicity, the familiarity, the way everyone knew everyone and looked out for each other. Loved that Emma could walk to school safely, and that his biggest worry most days was whether Mrs. Chen would have kolaches left when he got to the bakery. But he'd also felt the weight of it, sometimes the way small towns could become small lives if you weren't careful. The way comfort could calcify into complacency. The way dreams deferred too long became dreams forgotten. The sun rose indifferent and eternal. Jack showered, dressed in his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt Emma had given him for Christmas. He looked at himself in the mirror, a 42-year-old mechanic with calloused hands and hope in his eyes, and whispered, "Whatever happens, you tried. That's enough." At 8:45 a.m., a black Audi pulled up to Wilson's Auto Repair. The car was elegant, expensive, but not showy, the kind of vehicle that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. The door opened and out stepped Dr. Alessandra Rossi. She was shorter than Jack expected, maybe 5'6", dressed in dark slacks and a gray blazer that managed to look professional without being stuffy. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes, sharp and bright and intensely intelligent, swept across the garage with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Jack's heart was hammering so hard he was sure she could hear it. Emma stood beside him, having refused to go to school, and he felt her grip his arm. Dr. Rossi walked toward them, hand extended, smile warm and real. "Mr. Wilson, it's an honor to meet you." Jack shook her hand, found his voice. "The honor's mine, Dr. Rossi. This is my daughter Emma." "Ah, the one who defended your genius to that unpleasant man on social media. I saw the original post." Dr. Rossi's expression hardened briefly. "Some people mistake credentials for intelligence. They're often disappointed." "You came a long way," Jack said. "I hope it's not wasted." "So do I. May I see your notebooks?" They walked into the office together, this world-renowned engineer and small-town mechanic, and Jack laid out his life's work across a desk he'd bought used 15 years ago. Dr. Rossi put on reading glasses, leaned close, and began examining the pages with an intensity that made the garage feel like a cathedral, like something sacred was happening. She didn't speak for 10 minutes, just looked occasionally, making small sounds. And interesting, and once, very quietly, Jesu. Finally, she looked up at Jack, and her eyes were bright. "Mr. Wilson," she said, "I think we need to talk about the future." The word future hung in the air between them like something physical, something Jack could almost reach out and touch. Dr. Rossi was still holding one of his notebooks, her finger tracing the equations he'd written 3 years ago during a slow Tuesday afternoon, when the rain had kept customers away and his mind had wandered toward impossible problems. The future. Jack repeated, his voice barely steady. Emma's hand found his arm squeezing tight. Dr. Rossi set the notebook down carefully, treating it with the reverence usually reserved for ancient manuscripts. "Mr. Wilson, what you've developed here, particularly this variable coupling system, represents a genuine breakthrough in hybrid efficiency. My team in Maranello has been approaching this problem from a purely computational angle, using simulation software and iterative testing. But you," she gestured at the sketches, "you understood the mechanical poetry of it, the way systems want to work together if you just listen to them properly." Jack felt heat rising in his face. "I just thought about how it would feel, the transition between power sources. In my head, I could feel the hesitation, the slight disconnect, and I kept thinking there had to be a way to make it seamless, more organic." Exactly. Dr. Rossi's eyes lit up. This is what we lose sometimes in modern engineering. We have extraordinary tools, massive computing power teams of PhDs, but we forget that the best innovations often come from intimate understanding, from someone who's spent decades with their hands inside engines learning their language. She paused. "Tell me, have you ever heard of Enzo Ferrari himself?" "Of course. Founded the company, legendary designer." "He had no formal engineering degree," Dr. Rossi interrupted gently. "He was a racing driver first, then a team manager. He understood cars because he lived with them, raced them, broke them, fixed them. Some of our greatest innovations came from his intuition, not his credentials." She smiled. "Ferrari has always believed that genius lives in unexpected places. We've just forgotten to look sometimes." Emma made a small sound, something between a laugh and a sob. Jack glanced at her and saw tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, vindicated tears. The kind that came from watching someone you loved finally receive the recognition they'd always deserved. "So what are you saying?" Jack asked, though his heart already knew and was hammering against his ribs like it wanted to escape. "I'm saying Ferrari wants to hire you as an innovation consultant. We want to take this coupling system with your permission and develop it properly. Test it, refine it, potentially implement it in our next generation of hybrid vehicles. And we want you involved in that process, not just as the person who had the idea, but as an active part of the engineering team." The garage seemed to tilt slightly. Jack gripped the edge of his desk. "You want to hire me? Ferrari wants to hire me. Yes, I know this is sudden. I know it must seem surreal. But Mr. Wilson, I've been in this industry for over 2 decades. I've worked with the best minds in automotive engineering. And what you've created here in this small garage with no resources and no support is exceptional. The kind of exceptional that changes companies, that moves entire industries forward." "I don't have a degree," Jack said, the words tumbling out. "I never even took college physics. Everything I know I taught myself from books and technical papers and just taking things apart and putting them back together." Dr. Rossi leaned forward, her expression intense. "Do you know what Ferrari values more than anything? Passion. Understanding. The ability to see what others miss. You have all of that. The degree is just paper, Mr. Wilson. What matters is what lives in here. She tapped her temple. And here. She placed her hand over her heart. Jack felt something breaking open inside him, some calcified shell of small expectations and careful dreams that had kept him safe but small for so many years. He thought about his father who'd run this garage before him and never imagined it could be more than it was. Thought about his grandfather who'd believed honest work was its own reward and never needed external validation. Good men, both of them, who'd taught Jack to be content with his lot in life. But maybe contentment and ambition didn't have to be enemies. Maybe you could be grateful for what you had while still reaching for what you might become. What would this look like? He asked. Practically, I mean. I have a business here, a daughter, a life. We're flexible, Dr. Razi said. Initially, we'd like you to come to our North American headquarters in New Jersey for consultations. Perhaps 1 week per month to start. We'd compensate you well 6 figures annually, plus royalties if the coupling system goes into production. Eventually, if you wanted to relocate, we could discuss a full-time position, but we understand you have roots here. 6 figures. Jack had never made more than $40,000 in his best year. The number seemed fictional absurd, the kind of salary that existed for other people in other lives. And there's something else. Dr. Razi continued. Next week, we're attending the International Automotive Innovation Conference in Detroit. It's the industry's premier event. Manufacturers, engineers, journalists, everyone who matters in automotive innovation. Ferrari is giving a keynote presentation, and I'd like you there. We'd like to announce the partnership, publicly introduce you to the industry as the mind behind this breakthrough. Next week, Jack's voice cracked slightly. That's really soon. I know. But Mr. Wilson, opportunities like this have momentum. Right now, thanks to that viral post, people are paying attention. The automotive world is curious about the small-town mechanic whose sketches caught Ferrari's eye. We should use that curiosity, channel it into something positive. She pulled out her phone, showed him the conference website. The keynote is next Friday. Ferrari will cover all expenses, of course. Travel, hotel, everything. And you should bring Emma. She deserves to see this. Emma actually gasped. The conference in Detroit. Dad? Oh my God, you have to say yes. You have to. Jack looked at his daughter, saw the fierce pride blazing in her eyes, the absolute certainty that her father belonged on that stage. Then he looked around his garage, the familiar tools, the oil-stained floor, the photographs on the wall showing 3 generations of Wilson men standing in this exact spot. This place had been his world for so long. Safe. Known. Enough. But Emma was watching him with an expression that said she needed to see her father, be brave, needed to learn that dreams deferred weren't dreams denied, needed to understand that it was never too late to become who you were meant to be. Okay, Jack said quietly. Yes, we'll be there. Dr. Rossi's smile was radiant. Excellent. I'll have my assistant send over the details and the contract for your review. Read it carefully, have a lawyer look at it if you'd like. Ferrari is many things, but we're not in the business of taking advantage of brilliance. She stood, extended her hand again. Welcome to the Ferrari family, Mr. Wilson. I think you're going to change things for us. After she left, Jack and Emma stood in the garage in stunned silence. Finally, Emma broke it. Dad, holy crap. Holy actual crap. Language, Jack said automatically, but he was grinning. No, I'm serious. Do you understand what just happened, Ferrari? Keynote presentation. 6 figures. Dad, you're successful. You're actually successful. I've always been successful, Jack said gently. I kept us fed and safe and together. That's success. You know what I mean. You're successful in the way the world measures it, in the way Malcolm Reed measures it, in the way everyone who ever looked at this garage and thought just a mechanic measures it. Jack pulled his daughter into a hug. I know, and it feels good. But Em, listen to me. This doesn't change who we are. Okay? It changes our opportunities. Maybe our bank account, but not us. We're still the same people we were yesterday. The same people, but with Ferrari believing in them, Emma said into his shoulder. That's not nothing, Dad. That's everything. The next few days passed in a blur. The contract arrived. Jack did have a lawyer look at it, Mrs. Patterson's son, who practiced family law in Columbus and spent 3 hours making sure every clause was fair. It was. Ferrari was offering Jack more than money. They were offering respect, partnership, the chance to contribute meaningfully to something larger than himself. He signed the papers at his desk, while Emma took photos, insisting this was a moment that needed documentation. His hand shook slightly as he wrote his name, making the signature messier than usual. But it felt real in a way few things in his life ever had. The viral post's life cycle was winding down, replaced in the internet's attention span by newer outrages and entertainments. But the story had taken root in automotive circles. Blogs wrote about it. Small-town genius discovered through viral mockery. And Ferrari finds breakthrough in Ohio garage. Someone created a Wikipedia page for Jack that he had to ask Emma to delete 3 times before it finally stayed down. And through it all, Malcolm Reed was notably silent. His Instagram account, once a fountain of humble brags and carefully curated success, had gone dark. No new posts. The original mocking photo was still up, but the comments section had become a battleground where people debated whether Malcolm was a fool or a visionary who'd accidentally introduced genius to the world. Tommy Rodriguez stopped by with coffee and gossip. Heard Malcolm's been calling people trying to do damage control. Says he knew the sketches were good all along, that he was trying to help you get noticed. Jack laughed, bitter and brief. Of course he is. People aren't buying it. My cousin works at the country club in Cleveland, says Malcolm came in for dinner last night, and 3 different people gave him the cold shoulder. Apparently making fun of locals is only funny until those locals turn out to be worth more than you. I'm not worth more than anyone, Jack said firmly. Maybe not as a person, but definitely as an engineer now. You're the guy Ferrari wanted. That's going to stick in Malcolm's craw for a long time. Part of Jack wanted to feel satisfaction at that. Wanted to let the karma of the situation wash over him like warm water, soothing the sting of Malcolm's original cruelty. But mostly, he just felt tired. Revenge was exhausting, required energy better spent on forward motion. The day before the conference, Jack closed the garage early. He'd arranged for Tommy to handle any emergency calls, and Mrs. Patterson had promised to water the plants and collect the mail. Emma had packed their bags 2 days early, tried on 7 different outfits before settling on a blue dress that made her look heartbreakingly grown up. You nervous? She asked that evening over pizza from the place on Main Street. Terrified, Jack admitted. What if I get up there and freeze? What if everyone realizes I'm just a mechanic who got lucky? You're an engineer who got recognized, Emma corrected. There's a difference. And Dad, you've explained engines to me since I was 6 years old. You can explain anything to anyone. You just have to remember that you belong there as much as anyone else. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. They drove to Detroit the next morning, Jack's old pickup truck feeling distinctly out of place among the luxury sedans and sports cars in the conference hotel parking lot. The hotel itself was massive, all glass and marble, and the kind of carefully designed opulence that whispered money rather than shouting it. Jack felt underdressed in his sport coat, and khakis felt like someone would stop them at any moment and ask what they were doing there. But Dr. Rozzi met them in the lobby, and her smile was genuine and warm. You made it. How was the drive? Long but good, Jack said. Thank you for all this. The room, the arrangements. Please, you're doing us the favor. Come let me show you the conference floor. The main hall was enormous, filled with displays from every major automotive manufacturer and dozens of smaller innovative companies. Concept cars gleamed under spotlights. Engineers clustered around technical displays arguing good-naturedly about torque curves and aerodynamic coefficients. Journalists roamed with cameras and recorders hunting for the next big story. And there, in the far corner near the Mercedes display, stood Malcolm Reed. He was talking to a small group of people, gesturing expansively, probably explaining some business deal or acquisition. He hadn't seen Jack yet, was too absorbed in his own performance, and for a moment, Jack considered just avoiding him entirely. The conference was huge. They could easily never cross paths. But Emma had spotted him too. "Dad, that's him." "I know. Are you going to talk to him?" "I don't think." "Mr. Wilson." A journalist had appeared, young woman with bright eyes and a recording device. "I'm Sarah Chen from Automotive Engineering today. Would you have a moment for a few questions? My readers are fascinated by your story." Jack forced himself to focus. "Of course." The interview was brief. How did he develop his ideas? What inspired the hybrid coupling system? How did it feel to go from viral mockery to Ferrari partnership in less than a week? Jack answered honestly, carefully, trying not to sound bitter about Malcolm or arrogant about Ferrari. Just factual. Just true. When Sarah Chen thanked him and walked away, Jack noticed Malcolm watching from across the hall. Their eyes met. Malcolm's face went through several expressions: surprise, recognition, something that might have been shame or might have been calculation. Then he started walking over. "Jack Wilson, small world." "Malcolm." Jack kept his voice neutral, professional. "So you actually came to the conference with Ferrari?" Malcolm's smile was tight, forced. That's really something. Dr. Rossi invited us. It seemed like a good opportunity." "Right. The viral post thing. Listen about that." Malcolm glanced around, lowered his voice. "I hope you know, that was just social media humor. Nothing personal. I actually thought your sketches were interesting, which is why I shared them, to get you exposure." Emma made a sound that was definitely not polite. Jack put a hand on her shoulder. "It's fine, Malcolm. Water under the bridge." Good, good. Because I was thinking Reed Enterprises is always looking for innovative minds. Maybe we could set up a meeting, talk about bringing you onto my team. I've got a whole division focused on automotive tech investments. Your expertise could be really valuable." The audacity of it was breathtaking. Malcolm was trying to spin the entire situation, to rewrite history in real time, to somehow make himself the hero of a story where he'd played the villain. And more than that, he was trying to co-opt Jack's success to pull him into orbit, as though Ferrari's interest somehow meant he'd been right all along. Before Jack could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "I don't think that will be possible, Mr. Reed." They all turned. Dr. Rossi had appeared, flanked by two other Ferrari executives Jack hadn't met yet. Her expression was polite but cold, the kind of professional ice that spoke volumes. "Dr. Rossi." Malcolm said, his smile brightening by several watts. "Malcolm Reed, Reed Enterprises. We've actually corresponded in the past about potential partnerships." "Yes, I remember," Dr. Rossi said. "You're the one who advised us not to waste our time with Mr. Wilson when we reached out to verify his contact information. Local mechanics don't understand systems engineering, I believe you said. We chose not to take your advice." The color drained from Malcolm's face. Around them, several people had stopped to listen, drawn by the sharpness in Dr. Rossi's tone. "I think there was a misunderstanding," Malcolm started. "I was just trying to save us from pursuing a brilliant engineer because he didn't meet your criteria for credibility." Dr. Rossi's smile was razor sharp. "How fortunate that we make our own assessments. Now, if you'll excuse us, we need to prepare Mr. Wilson for his presentation." She steered Jack and Emma away, leaving Malcolm standing alone in the middle of the conference floor. As they walked, Jack heard the murmur of conversations starting behind them, saw phones coming out to capture the moment, knew that this story, Ferrari's engineer publicly dismissing the man who'd mocked her new consultant, would spread through automotive circles within hours. "You didn't have to do that," Jack said quietly. "Yes, I did," Dr. Rossi replied. "Men like Malcolm Reed need to learn that arrogance has consequences. And you need to understand that Ferrari stands behind our people. You're one of us now, Mr. Wilson. We protect our own." Emma was grinning so wide Jack thought her face might split. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Dr. Rossi walked Jack through the presentation. Ferrari's CEO would introduce the partnership. Then Jack would explain his coupling system in plain language, accessible to both engineers and journalists. They'd have a 3D animation of his design, a physical prototype that Ferrari's team had already started building based on his sketches, and a Q&A session afterward. "Just be yourself," Dr. Rossi advised. "Don't try to sound like an academic, or use jargon you're not comfortable with. Your strength is explaining complex ideas simply. That's rare and valuable." That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He stood at the hotel window, looking out over Detroit's skyline, thinking about the presentation tomorrow. Emma was asleep in the adjoining room, probably dreaming of MIT and Ferrari internships and all the possibilities that had suddenly opened before them, like doors in a house they'd always lived in, but never knew existed. His phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. "Whole town's watching tomorrow. We're having a viewing party at Rosie's. Make us proud." Then one from Mrs. Patterson. "My grandson set up the live stream on my TV. Can't wait to see you shine." Another from Sarah, his cousin. "You've got this, Jack. Show them what Ohio boys are made of." The support was overwhelming, humbling, terrifying. Jack had spent so long being invisible, being just another face in a small town, that the sudden visibility felt like standing naked under stadium lights. But beneath the fear was something else. A quiet excitement, a sense that he was finally stepping into a version of himself he'd always known existed, but never had permission to become. He texted back thank yous, then set his phone down and whispered to the sleeping city beyond his window. "Okay, let's do this." Morning came too fast and too slow. Jack dressed in the new suit Emma had insisted he buy, charcoal gray, properly fitted, making him look like someone who belonged in boardrooms and conference halls. Emma wore her blue dress and pride like armor. The keynote hall was packed. Hundreds of people, engineers, executives, journalists, academics. The front rows held the industry's elite names Jack had read in technical journals and business magazines. And somewhere in the back, probably sat Malcolm Reed, watching everything he'd mocked come to glorious, undeniable fruition. Dr. Rossi found them backstage. "Ready?" "No," Jack admitted. "But I'm here anyway." "That's all courage ever is, being terrified and showing up anyway." She squeezed his shoulder. "You're going to be wonderful." The lights dimmed. Ferrari's CEO took the stage, a dignified Italian man in his 60s who commanded attention simply by existing. He spoke about innovation, about Ferrari's commitment to pushing boundaries, about how the greatest discoveries often came from unexpected sources. And then he said, "Today we're proud to introduce a partnership that embodies these values. A self-taught engineer from Millfield, Ohio, whose work has solved challenges our best teams struggled with for months. Please welcome Mr. Jack Wilson." The applause was polite, curious, waiting to be convinced. Jack walked onto the stage, his legs somehow still working, despite feeling like water, and looked out at hundreds of faces, all turned toward him, all waiting to judge whether he deserved to be there. He found Emma in the third row. She was crying again, happy tears, and when she saw him looking, she mouthed, "I love you, Dad." Jack took a breath, stepped up to the microphone, and began to speak. "Good morning." Jack said, his voice steady, despite the earthquake happening inside his chest. "My name is Jack Wilson, and until about a week ago, I was just a mechanic in a small town in Ohio. Some of you might have seen me on social media recently being laughed at for thinking I could contribute something to automotive engineering." A ripple of recognition moved through the crowd. Some uncomfortable shifting, a few knowing smiles. "That's okay," Jack continued. "I've been underestimated my whole life, mostly by myself if I'm honest." He paused, let that settle. "I never went to college. Never took advanced physics or studied fluid dynamics in a classroom. Everything I know about engines, I learned by listening to them, by paying attention to what they were trying to tell me. Behind him, the screen lit up with one of his original sketches. The variable coupling system hand-drawn in mechanical pencil equations crowding the margins. It looked humble next to the polished graphics usually shown at conferences like this, but that was the point. "This is how I think," Jack said. "Not in computer simulations or CAD programs. In my head, I see engines as living systems that want to work in harmony. And when they don't, when there's friction or hesitation or inefficiency, I can feel it. Like a musician hearing a note that's slightly off-key." He clicked to the next slide, the same sketch now transformed into a sleek 3D rendering by Ferrari's design team. Ferrari's hybrid system is brilliant engineering, but there was a small problem during power transitions between the electric motor and the V12. A hesitation barely noticeable to most drivers, but there. Dr. Rossi's team had been working on solving it using advanced computational modeling, trying thousands of variables to find the optimal solution. Another click. An animation showing the current Ferrari system, the slight lag in power delivery highlighted in red. I approached it differently. I thought about how power wants to flow, how energy doesn't like to be interrupted. In nature, water doesn't stop and start. It finds the path of least resistance. So I designed a variable coupling that treats the power transition like a river instead of a switch. The animation changed, showing Jack's system. The coupling adjusting in real time, the power flow smooth and continuous, the red lag disappearing into green efficiency. The mathematics isn't complicated once you stop thinking about it as two separate systems fighting for control. Instead, it's one unified system learning to dance together. The electric motor doesn't hand off to the combustion engine, they overlap, they harmonize, they create something smoother than either could achieve alone. Jack looked out at the audience. They were leaning forward now, engaged, curious. He saw engineers nodding, saw journalists typing frantically on their phones, saw Dr. Rossi in the front row wearing a smile that said, "I told you so." And in the back, partially hidden behind a crowd of standing attendees, he saw Malcolm Reed. The man's face was pale, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the screen, showing Jack's work transformed into Ferrari's next innovation. "I didn't solve this problem because I'm smarter than Ferrari's engineers," Jack said. "I solved it because I spent 30 years with my hands inside engines learning their language. Because I had the freedom to think without the pressure of deadlines or the weight of expensive equipment. Sometimes the answer comes not from having more resources, but from having a different perspective." He clicked to the final slide, a video of the physical prototype Ferrari had built running on a test bench. The transition between power sources was seamless, silent, perfect. The efficiency improvement displayed in the corner 4.2%. "That might not sound like much," Jack said. 4%. But in a hybrid supercar, that's the difference between good and revolutionary. That's extended range, reduced emissions, better performance. That's the kind of improvement that changes what's possible. The applause started before he finished building like a wave. People stood first the front rows, then the middle, then the entire hall. A standing ovation for a small-town mechanic who dared to imagine he might have something worth contributing. Jack stood at the microphone, overwhelmed, trying to hold himself together. Emma was on her feet, tears streaming down her face, clapping so hard her hands had to hurt. Dr. Rossi was beaming, and all around the hall, the automotive industry's elite were acknowledging that genius didn't require credentials, only courage and insight and relentless curiosity. When the applause finally died down, the moderator opened the floor for questions. Hands shot up immediately. A man in the third row stood. "Dr. Heinrich Müller, BMW Advanced Engineering. Mr. Wilson, have you considered applications for this system beyond Ferrari? The principles you've outlined could revolutionize the entire hybrid market." Jack glanced at Dr. Rossi, who nodded permission. "I have about 40 other sketches in my notebooks that deal with different aspects of hybrid and electric systems. Cooling efficiency, battery management, regenerative braking optimization. I've been thinking about these problems for years, just never had anyone to share the solutions with. Another hand. A woman this time. Jennifer Okafor, MIT Department of Mechanical Engineering. Mr. Wilson, would you consider teaching? We have a program for practitioners and residents where experienced professionals share real-world knowledge with students. I'd be honored, Jack said, surprised by how true that felt. I never got to go to college myself, but I'd love to help students understand that innovation isn't just about theory. It's about intimacy with your subject matter. The questions continued. Technical inquiries about the coupling's torque distribution. Philosophical questions about self-taught expertise versus formal education. Journalists asking about his plans, his story, his thoughts on Malcolm Reed's viral post. To that last question, Jack paused. He could take the easy route, could brush it off with grace and humility, or he could tell the truth. That post hurt, he said simply. Not because strangers were laughing at me, but because it felt like confirmation of every doubt I'd ever had about myself. Every voice that said I wasn't good enough, wasn't educated enough, wasn't worthy of taking up space in rooms like this. He looked out at the crowd. But here's what I learned: those voices are always wrong. Not because everyone's ideas are brilliant, most aren't, including plenty of mine, but because you can't know the value of what you're creating until you have the courage to share it. Malcolm Reed accidentally did me a favor. He forced my work into the light, and once it was there, the right people could see it for what it was. Someone in the back called out, "Do you forgive him?" Jack considered that. I don't know if there's anything to forgive. He acted according to his values, and I acted according to mine. I'm not angry. I'm just grateful that his mockery led to this moment. As the Q&A wrapped up, Jack stepped off the stage to another round of applause. People surrounded him immediately, engineers wanting to discuss technical details, journalists requesting interviews, representatives from other automotive companies sliding business cards into his hand. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, terrifying. Dr. Rossi rescued him after 15 minutes, steering him toward a quieter corner where Emma waited. "Dad, that was incredible," Emma said, hugging him so hard he couldn't breathe. "You were perfect. You were exactly yourself, and it was perfect." I was terrified the whole time. It didn't show. You looked like you belonged up there, like you'd been doing it your whole life. A commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Malcolm Reed was trying to leave, but a cluster of journalists had cornered him. Jack couldn't hear the questions, but he could see Malcolm's face going red, could see the defensive posture, the forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Should we help him?" Emma asked, and Jack couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic. "No," Dr. Rossi said firmly. He made his choices. Let him face the consequences. But Jack was already walking over. Not to rescue Malcolm exactly, but because leaving him to drown in humiliation would make Jack feel like he'd descended to Malcolm's level, and he'd spent too long building character to throw it away for revenge. "Excuse me," Jack said, pushing gently through the journalists. "Mr. Reed and I actually need to have a private conversation. Would you mind giving us a moment?" The journalists reluctantly dispersed, though several kept their cameras trained on the two men. Malcolm looked at Jack with an expression somewhere between gratitude and suspicion. "You didn't have to do that," Malcolm said quietly. "I know. Walk with me." They moved toward a less crowded section of the hall near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Detroit's skyline. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Malcolm broke the silence. "I was wrong. About you. About your work. I thought—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with words he wasn't used to saying. "I thought my success gave me the right to judge everyone else's worth, to decide who mattered and who didn't, based on what they'd accomplished by my metrics." "You did," Jack agreed. "You were cruel, actually, not just wrong cruel." "I know." Malcolm's voice was barely audible. "I saw you with your daughter, saw how much she believed in you, And I mocked you anyway because it made me feel superior, made me feel like the life I'd built was validated by putting down people who'd made different choices. Jack leaned against the window watching the city below. Why are you telling me this? Because Dr. Rossi was right. I told Ferrari not to waste their time with you. When they reached out to verify your information, I said you were just a small-town mechanic with delusions of competence. I actively tried to sabotage your opportunity because I couldn't stand the idea that someone without my advantages might actually be brilliant. The admission hung between them. Jack felt anger rising. This man had nearly cost him everything. Had tried to kill his opportunity before it could even breathe. But underneath the anger was something else. Pity, maybe. Or just exhaustion at how much energy Malcolm had wasted on tearing others down instead of building himself up. But they came anyway, Jack said. They came anyway, because real excellence recognizes itself, and Dr. Rossi is excellent enough to ignore idiots like me. Malcolm turned to look at Jack directly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve your acknowledgement. But I needed you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm sorry. Genuinely sorry. Jack studied the man who'd humiliated him, whose casual cruelty had somehow become the catalyst for the best week of Jack's life. Malcolm looked smaller now, diminished by remorse and the public unraveling of his carefully constructed superiority. I appreciate the apology, Jack said finally. And for what it's worth, I don't hate you. I don't even really think about you. You were just a moment in my life, Malcolm. A painful moment, sure, but just a moment. And it led to this, so in a weird way, I guess I should thank you. Please don't, Malcolm said with a bitter laugh. That would make it worse somehow. Then I won't. But I will say this, you're clearly smart, clearly capable, clearly successful. Maybe use some of that energy to lift people up instead of putting them down. You might find it's more satisfying than the alternative. Malcolm nodded slowly. That sounds like something a good person would say. I'm not particularly good. I'm just tired of anger. It's expensive to carry around, and I've got better things to spend my energy on now. They stood together in uncomfortable silence for another moment, then Malcolm extended his hand. Good luck, Jack. I mean that. I hope Ferrari knows how lucky they are. Jack shook his hand, felt the strange closure of it. Take care of yourself, Malcolm. As Malcolm walked away, shoulders slumped, ego deflated, humbled in a way money could never unhumble. Jack felt Emma appear at his side. You're too nice to him, she said. Maybe. But being cruel back wouldn't make me feel better. It would just make me more like him. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher, Jack said, echoing her words from days ago. She's 16 and smarter than me. The rest of the conference passed in a blur. Jack gave 3 more interviews, exchanged contact information with engineers from Toyota and Tesla, and Porsche listened to Dr. Rossi outline Ferrari's plans for his coupling system. By the end of the day, he had 6 job offers, invitations to speak at 4 universities, and a headache from trying to process how completely his life had transformed in less than a week. That evening, Ferrari hosted a private dinner for Jack and Emma. Dr. Rossi was there, along with several other Ferrari executives and engineers. They ate at a restaurant that didn't have prices on the menu, drank wine that probably cost more than Jack's monthly mortgage, and talked about the future. We'd like to fast-track the coupling system into production, said Marco Bellucci, Ferrari's director of innovation. If testing confirms what we believe it could be in our next-generation hybrid platform within 18 months, that's unprecedented speed for us. And we'd like your input on the full development process, Dr. Rossi added. Not just the engineering, but the implementation, the refinement, everything. This is your innovation, Jack. You should see it through. Jack set down his wine glass, still not quite believing any of this was real. I keep waiting to wake up, for someone to say there's been a mistake. No mistake, Marco said. Just talent finally being recognized. It happens more rarely than it should, which is why when we find it, we hold on tight. Emma, who'd been quieter than usual, finally spoke up. "Can I ask a question? What happens to my dad's garage? To Wilson's auto repair?" Everyone looked at Jack, who hadn't really thought that far ahead. The garage had been his identity for so long, 3 generations of family history lived in that building. "I don't know," he admitted. "I can't exactly run it from New Jersey or Italy." "You could sell it," Emma said carefully. "Or hire someone to manage it. Or—" She paused, looked at Dr. Razi. "I've been thinking, what if it became something else? What if Ferrari helped transform it into an innovation space for self-taught engineers? A place where people like my dad, people with ideas but no resources, could develop their concepts." Dr. Razi's eyes lit up. "A Ferrari Innovation Lab in Millfield, Ohio, focused on discovering and nurturing unconventional talent." She looked at Marco. "That's brilliant. We've talked about expanding our talent pipeline, looking beyond traditional recruitment. This could be the pilot program." "It would honor the garage's history," Jack said, slowly warming to the idea. "Keep it in the family in a way. Just evolve it into something bigger." "We could fund it," Marco said. "Provide equipment mentorship connection to our engineering teams. Make it a place where the next Jack Wilson could be discovered before they spend decades in isolation." The conversation spiraled from there, everyone contributing ideas, building on each other's enthusiasm. By the time dessert arrived, they'd sketched out a rough plan for the Wilson Innovation Lab, a Ferrari-backed facility that would serve as both working garage and experimental space, open to anyone with genuine curiosity and unconventional thinking. "You'd still own it," Dr. Razi clarified. "Still have final say over its direction, but Ferrari would support it financially and technically. Consider it an investment in the kind of talent traditional channels miss." Jack looked at his daughter, saw the pride and excitement in her face, and felt something settle inside him. This was how you honored the past while embracing the future, not by freezing things in amber, but by letting them grow into what they were meant to become. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." They toasted with expensive wine, this unlikely group of Italian executives and Ohio mechanics, brought together by sketches in a notebook and the bizarre alchemy of viral humiliation turning into vindication. Later that night, back in his hotel room, Jack called Tommy Rodriguez. "How'd the viewing party go?" he asked. "Dude, Rosie's was packed. Standing room only. When you started talking, everyone shut up. And when they applauded, we all applauded here too. Jack, the whole town is so proud of you. Mrs. Chen made you a kolache trophy. It's ridiculous and perfect." Jack laughed, felt tears threatening. "I can't wait to see it." "When are you coming home?" "Tomorrow." "But Tommy, it's not going to be the same. Things are going to change." "Change is good, hermano. We've been the same for too long anyway. Maybe you being successful gives the rest of us permission to dream bigger too." After hanging up, Jack stood at the window again, looking out at Detroit's lights. Emma emerged from her room in pajamas, came to stand beside him. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, just thinking about everything that's happened. 1 week ago, I was changing oil and fixing brake pads. Now I'm designing systems for Ferrari and planning innovation labs. It's surreal." "It's deserved," Emma corrected. "You earned this. Not through luck or connections or accident, but through decades of curiosity and work, and refusing to let your circumstances define your potential." "You sound like a motivational poster." "I sound like someone who's watched her father be brilliant her entire life and finally get to see the world acknowledge it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm so proud of you. And Mom would be too, wherever she is." Jack wrapped his arm around his daughter. "You think—" "I know, because you showed me that worth isn't determined by other people's recognition. That you can be successful by your own metrics, even when the world doesn't notice. And then, when the world finally does notice, you can handle it with grace, because you never needed their validation to know your value." "When did you get so wise?" Jack asked for the second time that day. "I had a good teacher," Emma said again. "He's a mechanic from Ohio, who happens to be a genius." They stood together in comfortable silence, father and daughter, watching a city full of strangers sleep while their own lives transformed into something neither could have imagined a week ago. And Jack thought about Malcolm Reed, probably lying awake in some expensive home, learning the hard way that cruelty always has a cost. Thought about Dr. Rossi, who'd seen value where others saw only a joke. Thought about Millfield in the garage and all the quiet years of work that had led to this moment. Most of all, he thought about the notebook still sitting in his office back home, filled with years of private wondering. They weren't private anymore. They were becoming public, becoming real, becoming the foundation for a career and a legacy, and proof that dreams deferred weren't dreams denied. Tomorrow, they'd drive home to Millfield, to their small town and their small life that suddenly felt enormous with possibility. Tomorrow, they'd start planning the innovation lab. Start working with Ferrari's team. Start building something that honored the past while creating the future. But tonight, Jack Wilson, mechanic, father engineer dreamer, stood in a hotel room in Detroit and let himself feel successful. Not because Ferrari said so. Not because the internet had pivoted from mockery to celebration. But because he'd had the courage to keep creating, even when no one was watching, even when it seemed pointless, even when men like Malcolm Reed tried to convince him he should know his place and stay there. His place, it turned out, was wherever his mind could reach, and his mind, freed from the constraints of humility that had become self-limitation, was reaching for the stars. The drive back to Millfield felt different somehow, like they were returning to a place that looked the same, but had fundamentally shifted. Jack's truck rumbled along the familiar highways past the same exit signs and rest stops and billboards he'd seen 1,000 times, but everything had a new quality to it, now sharper, brighter, weighted with meaning it hadn't carried before. Emma slept most of the way, exhausted from the conference's emotional intensity, her head resting against the window. Jack drove in comfortable silence, letting his mind wander through everything that had happened. A week ago, he'd been invisible. Now automotive journalists had his phone number. MIT wanted him to speak. Ferrari was building prototypes based on his sketches. The whiplash of it all should have been disorienting, but instead, it felt oddly natural, like he'd been waiting his whole life for permission to step into a version of himself that had always existed beneath the surface. They pulled into Millfield, just as the sun was setting, painting Main Street in that golden hour light that made even ordinary things look magical. The hardware store, the diner, the post office, all the familiar landmarks of Jack's entire world. His world that was about to expand beyond these boundaries, but would always be rooted here in this small town that had raised him and held him, and never quite known what to do with the dreamer who lived inside its most reliable mechanic. Tommy's truck was parked outside the garage. As Jack pulled in, the bay door opened and a crowd of people poured out. Tommy, Rosie from the diner, Mrs. Patterson and her son, Mrs. Chen from the bakery, the Henderson kid, whose Civic still needed that check engine light, diagnosed maybe 30 people total. All of Millfield's downtown core gathered to welcome home their accidental celebrity. "Welcome back, genius," Tommy called out, grinning wide. "Don't start," Jack said, but he was smiling too. Mrs. Chen pushed forward with a box. Inside was indeed a Kalache trophy, an absurd sculpture made entirely of pastries, somehow holding its shape with a little fondant banner reading, "Millfield's finest mind." "It's beautiful, and I'm definitely not eating it," Jack said, which made everyone laugh. Rosie hugged him hard. "We watched the whole thing at the diner. When you started talking about listening to engines, old Frank Harrison teared up. Said it was the first time someone on TV made sense in 20 years. "That's because Frank's hearing aid hasn't worked since the Clinton administration," someone called out, and the crowd laughed again. They celebrated theirs in the garage, people bringing food and drinks, sharing stories about watching the conference, repeating Jack's best lines back to him with theatrical flair. It was pure small-town joy, uncomplicated, genuine, the kind that came from watching one of your own succeed and feeling like maybe that success reflected well on everyone. Emma woke up and joined the party, accepting congratulations and questions about Detroit, and what it was like to watch her father on stage. She handled it all with teenage grace, proud, but also clearly ready for normal life to resume, for the attention to shift away so she could process everything that had happened. As the celebration wound down and people headed home to their own lives, Tommy lingered. He and Jack sat on the tailgate of Tommy's truck drinking beer and watching Millfield settle into evening. "So," Tommy said. "Ferrari." "Ferrari," Jack agreed. "You gonna move, take Emma to New Jersey or Italy or wherever?" "I don't think so. Not permanently anyway. Dr. Rossi said I could consult remotely, mostly just travel when needed. And we're planning something here, turning the garage into an innovation lab. Ferrari-backed, but focused on finding talent in unexpected places." Tommy whistled low. "That's ambitious." "Yeah, probably crazy. But Emma suggested it, and the more I think about it, the more it feels right. Like, this is how you honor what my dad and grandfather built, not by preserving it exactly as it was, but by evolving it into what it could become. Your dad would have loved that. He always said you saw things different than other people. Used to worry it would make life hard for you." "It did," Jack said quietly. "But it also made life mine. I wasn't living someone else's path. I was creating my own, even when I didn't realize that's what I was doing." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind only old friends could share. Then Tommy said, "You know, Malcolm Reed's been calling people right, trying to rehabilitate his image, saying he always knew you were talented, that the post was meant to generate exposure." Jack sighed. "Of course he is. Nobody's buying it. You handled him right at the conference with grace. Made him look even smaller by comparison. That's the thing about men like Malcolm. They think power comes from putting others down. Never realize it actually comes from lifting others up." "I don't want to think about Malcolm anymore. He's just a guy who made bad choices. We all make bad choices sometimes." "Yeah, but most of us don't make them go viral." Tommy finished his beer, tossed the bottle in the recycling bin Jack kept by the garage door. "You're gonna be okay, hermano. Better than okay. You're gonna change things." Over the next few months, Millfield watched Jack Wilson's life transform with the fascinated attention small towns reserve for local celebrities. Ferrari's legal team worked with Jack to patent the variable coupling system under his name, with Ferrari holding exclusive licensing rights. The financial details weren't public, but Tommy's cousin, who worked at the bank, mentioned that Jack's account suddenly had the kind of balance that suggested oil changes were now optional rather than essential. The garage closed for renovations in early December. Ferrari sent a team of contractors who worked with a local crew to transform Wilson's auto repair into something that honored its history while embracing its future. The old bay doors remained, as did the original signage, but inside, everything changed. New equipment arrived: 3D printers, CAD workstations, testing benches, tools that looked like they belonged in a laboratory rather than a garage. The office expanded, knocking through into the apartment upstairs which Jack and Emma had already moved out of, relocating to a modest house on Miller's Lake that had a bedroom for Emma and a workshop for Jack, and enough space for both of them to breathe. The sign went up on a cold January morning: Wilson Innovation Lab, a Ferrari partnership. Underneath smaller letters, where unconventional thinking meets advanced engineering. Dr. Rossi flew in for the opening along with Marco Bellucci and a small team from Ferrari. The entire town showed up, crowding into the transformed space, marveling at equipment most of them couldn't name. Jack gave a short speech about honoring the past, while building the future, about how genius could live anywhere if you knew how to look for it, about creating opportunities for people who thought like him, the self-taught, the curious, the ones who saw patterns others missed. "This lab is for the dreamers," Jack said, standing where he used to change oil, surrounded by cutting-edge technology and hometown pride. "The ones who sketch in notebooks late at night, the ones who see problems and can't help but imagine solutions, the ones who've been told they're not qualified, not educated, not credentialed enough. You are enough. You always were. And now you have a place to prove it." The applause was thunderous. Mrs. Chen was crying. Tommy was filming on his phone, probably posting it to every social media platform simultaneously. And Dr. Rossi was smiling with satisfaction, looking around at what Ferrari's investment had created, not just a lab, but a statement that excellence deserved support regardless of its origin. After the ceremony, Dr. Rossi pulled Jack aside. They walked outside into the winter air breath fogging in the cold. "You did something remarkable here," she said. "Not just with the lab, but with how you've handled all of this. The success, the attention, the opportunity. You remained yourself. That's rare." "I had good teachers," Jack said. "My daughter reminds me daily that worth isn't determined by external validation. And my father taught me that honest work is its own reward." "Your father was a wise man. But Jack, I hope you also understand that accepting recognition doesn't diminish humility. You can be proud of what you've accomplished. You should be proud." "I'm learning. It's a process." They stood together, watching Millfield's main street, this small town that had incubated a mind capable of solving problems that had stumped Ferrari's best engineers. Dr. Rossi pulled her coat tighter against the cold. "I have to return to Italy tomorrow," she said, "but I'll be back in March. We're running full-scale tests on the coupling system then, and I want you there. Also," she paused, seemed to choose her words carefully, "I'd like to take you to dinner, not as colleagues, as friends. Maybe more than friends, if you're open to that possibility." Jack looked at her, saw the slight vulnerability in her expression, the courage it took to say those words. Dr. Alessandra Rossi, brilliant, accomplished, confident in every professional setting, was nervous asking a small-town mechanic to dinner. "I'd like that," Jack said. "Very much." Her smile could have melted the January frost. "Good. Then it's a date. An actual date, not a business meeting masquerading as one. Should I dress up? I only own 2 suits now, and one's still in the dry cleaning from the conference." "Dress how you're comfortable. I'm interested in Jack Wilson, the engineer, the father, the dreamer, not the suit he wears." They stood there a moment longer, the beginning of something tentative and wonderful growing between them, before the cold drove them back inside, where Tommy immediately noticed and gave Jack a thumbs up so obvious that Emma saw it from across the room and rolled her eyes hard enough to sprain something. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came news that changed Emma's trajectory. MIT's acceptance letter arrived in March along with a full scholarship and a note from the Dean of Engineering personally welcoming the daughter of Jack Wilson to their program. Emma cried reading it, happy tears mixed with the bittersweet knowledge that childhood was ending and adult life beginning. "You'll come visit, right?" she asked Jack that evening. "Like constantly, embarrassingly often. Every weekend if you want. MIT's only a 12-hour drive." "Dad, that's insane. Just fly." "I can afford to fly now," Jack said, still getting used to that reality. "But driving gives me time to think, time to work through problems in my head." "You're going to be that dad, aren't you? The one who shows up to every parents' weekend and knows all my professors' names and asks way too many questions about my projects." "Absolutely. I missed out on college myself. I'm living vicariously through you now." Emma hugged him. "I'm gonna miss you, and the lab, and Millfield, and everything about this life. It's not going anywhere. You can always come back. But Em, you need to go forward too. Need to see what you can become when you're not limited by your father's horizons." "Your horizons are pretty expansive now, Dad. You're literally consulting for Ferrari." "True. But they're still my horizons. You need to find your own. Make your own sketches. Dream your own dreams." The coupling system passed Ferrari's tests in April, with results that exceeded expectations. The efficiency improvement held at 2%, but additionally, the system reduced mechanical stress on the hybrid components, potentially extending the lifespan of the entire drivetrain. Ferrari announced they'd be implementing it in their next hybrid model, scheduled for release in 18 months, and Jack's name would appear in the technical specifications as the primary designer. The automotive press covered it extensively. Jack gave interviews to every major publication, always careful to credit Ferrari's team for their development work, always humble about his contribution. But the narrative had taken on a life of its own. The small-town mechanic, whose viral humiliation became worldwide vindication. It was a story too perfect not to tell, and Jack had learned to accept his role in it, even when it felt reductive, like his entire life had been flattened into a single before and after moment. The lab's first round of applications came in May. 47 people from across the country, all with unconventional backgrounds, all with ideas they'd developed in isolation, all hoping for the kind of opportunity Jack had stumbled into. The Ferrari team helped Jack review them, and they selected 5 for the inaugural program. A former coal miner with battery efficiency designs, a stay-at-home mom who'd revolutionized aerodynamic modeling, a retired teacher with insights into electric motor, cooling, a self-taught programmer whose algorithms optimized regenerative braking, and a 22-year-old community college dropout whose approach to lightweight materials made Ferrari's composites team actually gasp. They arrived in Millfield in June, these 5 dreamers, and Jack welcomed them to the lab that bore his name but was built for them. He saw himself in each of them. The hunger, the doubt, the desperate hope that maybe their ideas mattered. Maybe their perspective had value. Maybe they weren't crazy for thinking they could contribute something meaningful. "I know what you're feeling," Jack told them that first day. The imposter syndrome. The fear that someone will realize you don't belong here. But here's the truth: you do belong. Your unconventional path isn't a weakness. It's your strength. You see things differently because you learn differently, and that different perspective is exactly what innovation needs. Over the summer, the lab hummed with activity. The 5 fellows worked on their projects with Ferrari's support and Jack's mentorship. Dr. Rossi visited monthly, and her relationship with Jack deepened from friendship into something neither of them had expected, but both welcomed. They took it slow, mindful of the distance and complexity. But there was an ease between them that felt inevitable, like 2 people who'd been waiting their whole lives to find someone who understood them completely. Emma left for MIT in August, and Jack drove her there himself. 12 hours of father-daughter conversation about the future and the past and everything in between. They unpacked her dorm room together, Jack embarrassing her by organizing her engineering textbooks alphabetically, and asking her roommate's father way too many questions about Boston. "You're going to be fine," Jack told her as he prepared to leave. "Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary." "I learned from the best," Emma said, crying again, hugging him so tight. "Don't let the lab fall apart without me." "Impossible. You built half of it." The drive back to Millfield was lonely but peaceful. Jack thought about how much had changed in less than a year, how a single moment of cruelty had cascaded into transformation. He thought about Malcolm Reed, who'd posted an apology on social media that felt performative, but perhaps represented genuine growth. He thought about the garage, now a lab where 5 people were discovering their own potential. He thought about Dr. Rossi waiting for him in Millfield for a long weekend together. Most of all, he thought about the notebooks, those years of private dreaming that had finally found their audience. 23 notebooks that had become a career, a legacy, a proof that dedication to craft mattered even when no one was watching. Fall brought the first patent approval, the variable coupling system now officially credited to Jack Wilson, licensed exclusively to Ferrari, but bearing his name for eternity in the engineering record. Tommy threw a party at Rosie's diner to celebrate. Half the town showed up. Someone made a cake shaped like an engine. It was ridiculous and perfect, and exactly the kind of hometown celebration Jack had never imagined receiving, but deeply appreciated. The lab's first fellows completed their 6-month program in December, each emerging with refined designs and connections to manufacturers interested in their work. The coal miner's battery system was being reviewed by Tesla. The stay-at-home mom had been hired by Porsche as a consultant. The retired teacher's cooling innovation was patent pending. The programmer had received venture capital funding to start his own company. and the community college dropout was continuing at the lab full-time, her materials research too promising to interrupt. "This is what success looks like," Dr. Rossi told Jack at the closing ceremony. "Not just your success, but the success you enabled in others. That's legacy, Jack. That's what matters." Winter settled over Millfield again, a year after the renovations had begun. The lab announced its second round of Fellows 8 spots. This time, the program expanding with Ferrari's increased investment. Applications poured in from around the world. Jack's story had resonated globally, giving hope to countless self-taught dreamers who'd spent years believing their lack of credentials disqualified them from contributing. On a quiet Tuesday evening in late January, exactly 1 year after the infamous viral post, Jack sat in his home workshop sketching in a new notebook. The old ones were archived, now safely stored, but the habit continued. He was working on an idea about electric vehicle charging efficiency when his phone rang. Unknown number. International. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Wilson? This is Henrik Johansson, Chief Technology Officer at Volvo. I hope I'm not calling too late." Jack checked the time. 7 p.m. "Not at all. How can I help you?" "I've been following your work with Ferrari, and I'm impressed not just by your innovations, but by your approach to finding and nurturing talent. Volvo is interested in partnering with your lab. We have some efficiency problems we've been struggling with, and I think your perspective and your fellows' perspectives might be exactly what we need." The conversation lasted an hour. By the end, Jack had sketched out a preliminary consulting arrangement that would bring Volvo into the lab's partnership ecosystem alongside Ferrari, expanding opportunities for fellows and creating a model for how major manufacturers could tap into unconventional talent. After hanging up, Jack sat in his workshop, surrounded by tools and sketches and the quiet satisfaction of a life that had finally aligned with its purpose. He thought about sending Malcolm Reed a thank you note genuinely, without irony, for being the catalyst that launched this cascade. But that would be cruel in its own way, rubbing salt in wounds that were probably still raw. Instead, Jack opened his laptop and began drafting a blog post about the importance of creating pathways for non-traditional engineers. He'd started writing occasionally, sharing thoughts about innovation and education and the artificial barriers that kept brilliant minds from contributing. His posts got shared, widely cited in academic papers used in engineering programs, to spark discussion about credentialism versus capability. The doorbell rang. Dr. Rossi stood on his porch, overnight bag in hand, early for her planned weekend visit. "Surprise," she said. "I caught an earlier flight. Hope that's okay." "It's perfect," Jack said, meaning it completely. They made dinner together in his kitchen, this unlikely pair, Italian Ferrari engineer and Ohio garage owner, talking about voltage optimization and whether to make pasta or steak. They'd found a rhythm together, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection, taking their time, building something real. Later, sitting on his couch with wine and comfortable silence, Dr. Rossi said, "Do you ever think about how different your life would be if Malcolm Reed hadn't posted those photos?" "Sometimes. But I think I would have gotten here eventually. Maybe slower, maybe through a different door. But the work was good, Alessandra. It would have found its way into the world somehow." "I love your optimism. But I'm not sure that's true. Good work gets overlooked all the time. Brilliant people spend entire lives being invisible because they don't have the right connections or credentials or luck. Then we build more labs," Jack said simply. "More pathways, more ways for people to be seen. That's what the Wilson Lab is really about, making sure fewer people have to wait for a miracle or a viral post. Making sure talent gets recognized on purpose, not by accident." She kissed him, then soft and certain, and Jack thought about how strange life was. How a single moment of cruelty had led to this moment of contentment. How the worst thing Malcolm Reed had ever done to him had accidentally become the best thing that ever happened. Spring returned to Millfield, bringing Emma home from MIT for break, bringing new fellows to the lab, bringing warmth after a long winter. Jack's second patent was approved, an optimization for regenerative braking systems he'd developed with one of the fellows. Ferrari announced that their hybrid model featuring Jack's coupling system had exceeded all performance expectations in testing and would launch ahead of schedule. The automotive world had fully embraced Jack Wilson now. He was invited to give the keynote at that year's International Automotive Innovation Conference, a full-circle moment that felt simultaneously surreal and inevitable. He accepted, but insisted that two of his fellows co-present with him, sharing the stage and the spotlight, demonstrating that his story wasn't unique, that brilliance really did live everywhere if you knew how to look. On a warm May evening, Jack stood in the lab, watching the new fellows work, their heads bent over designs and prototypes, their faces showing the concentration he recognized from his own years of solitary sketching. Dr. Rossi was there consulting with the materials specialist. Emma was home from school helping debug some code. Tommy had stopped by with sandwiches for everyone refusing payment, just happy to be part of something extraordinary. This was success, Jack thought. Not the patents or the partnership or the recognition, though, all of that mattered. Real success was creating space for others to discover what they were capable of. Was building a lab that would outlive him, that would find and nurture the next generation of unconventional thinkers. Was showing his daughter that worth came from character and curiosity, not credentials. Was loving and being loved by someone who saw him completely and chose him anyway. Malcolm Reed had tried to make him small, tried to use mockery to enforce the social order that said mechanics stayed in their lane, and dreaming beyond your station was delusion. But Malcolm had fundamentally misunderstood how genius worked. It didn't require permission or pedigree. It only required passion, dedication, and the courage to keep creating even when the world insisted you shouldn't. Jack pulled out his phone and on impulse found Malcolm's last public post, the apology from months ago that had received mixed responses. He'd never engaged with it, never acknowledged it publicly, but now he typed a simple reply. "Thank you for the introduction. It changed my life." He posted it before he could second-guess himself, then put his phone away and returned to the work that mattered, mentoring the dreamer at the workbench, refining designs with Dr. Rossi, planning the future of a lab that proved talent needed opportunity more than it needed credentials. The sun set over Millfield, painting the sky in colors that didn't require validation to be beautiful. And Jack Wilson, former mechanic, current engineer, eternal dreamer, stood in a garage that had become a laboratory, that had become a movement, surrounded by people who understood that genius, like dignity, never depended on status. It lived in the heart, in the willingness to see what others missed, in the courage to sketch solutions when no one was watching, and the grace to share them when the world finally paid attention.